Hey, you awesome folks! Thanks for taking this journey of discovery with your guide, Keith Hane. You're listening to the Becoming Bridge Builders podcast, your favorite podcast for everything from racial reconciliation to education innovation, justice reform, and leading change in the 21st century. This podcast is for people who love to be challenged with difficult topics, but want practical solutions to solve these challenging issues. Becoming Bridge Builders makes change possible. Each week on the podcast, Keith invites innovative thought leaders to share how they are building bridges in their area of expertise. You will hear breakthrough ideas and concepts that are changing the world. He's featuring guests who are best-selling authors, leaders at Microsoft, entrepreneurs, leading educators, professors, lawyers, and so many more. Listen in to learn how you can be the bridge to the change you are seeking.
My guest today, Dr. Craig Hane, also known as Dr. Dell, is a math educator and innovator dedicated to transforming how math is taught and learned. With a PhD in algebraic numeric theory and decades of teaching and business experience, Dr. Dell empowers students and professionals alike to demystify math like scientific calculators and Wolfram Alpha. His mission is to break down math barriers and inspire listeners to invest in yourself for a brighter future. Welcome, Dr. Dale, to the podcast. Well, Craig, it's so good to have you on the podcast. How you doing today, my friend?
Great. My pleasure, Keith.
Looking forward to this conversation. Our names are almost the same. They're a little bit different. I have a Y, which makes mine a little bit more Irish, so we'll go with that.
There we go.
So, Craig, I'd like to ask my guest this question. What's the best piece of advice you ever received?
When I was 10 years old, my Sunday school teacher, Theron York, taught me all sorts of things from the New Testament, but the best piece of advice was, Craig, whatever you believe, really believe, is what will happen to you in your life.
Interesting. Okay.
He said, now, it's not what you desire, it's what you believe. And it's very hard to form your beliefs. It's easy to want something.
Right.
Believing is hard. And I learned to do that, and it's happened all my life. And I've had maybe all sorts of things happen to me that I believed would happen that were highly improbable. And
wow, that's really cool. I love that. I'm curious, a person of your stature and accomplishment, who are some people in your life who have served as mentors for you along the way?
many. I have a whole set of wisdom tools that I now offer my students, and I got them from many people. The wisest woman when I was young was my Aunt Ines, very wise woman, very happy woman, not educated in any way you'd think of being educated, but very wise. There's a huge difference between intelligence and wisdom. She had wisdom. Her husband, Uncle Jeff Davis, taught me to count using Cheerios when I was 5 years old. And when I was entered into a school when I was 5 years old, I was the only kid that had been taught to count. And my teacher had me help my fellow students. I was 5 years old, and that was the beginning of my learning and teaching math career. And then it went on from there, and I could tell you lots of examples of people that gave me great advice that saved my life. I could give you lots of examples.
That's amazing. Let's talk about your background, because before we got on the podcast, you talked about how you got into discovering that you weren't good at math according to your teachers to getting a PhD in math. So tell us kind of that journey of that story, how you got there.
Well, it's in detail in my book, How and Why Public School Math is Destroying the USA. And if you go to my website, craighane.com, you get a free PDF copy.
Cool.
Then you'll know all about it. CRAIGHANE.com. Now, my Uncle Jack Davis, who was a barber and a builder, taught me to count. Then he taught me practical math. That he wasn't a math teacher. He was a builder. And up through the 8th grade, I always knew more math than my teacher did because he taught me practical things. Then when I took algebra my freshman year in high school, I didn't like it. I didn't do well in it. And my principal told me, well, you'll never go to college because you didn't do good in algebra. And well, I'm dumb. I don't know. My sophomore year, I had a great teacher, Miss O'Hare, taught me geometry. I loved geometry, did great in geometry. Then I had algebra again my junior year. Didn't like it again. Craig, you're not going to college. My senior year, I was in a town, fortunately, that had a school there, DePaul University, Greencastle, Indiana. And my geometry teacher said, Craig, your senior year, why don't you go to DePaul and take college algebra and see how you do there? She knew that the high school algebra teacher was not any good. She couldn't say it. So I went to DePaul, and they made a mistake. They put me in with sophomores, not freshmen at DePaul. Dr. Clint Gass was my teacher, but he was a good teacher, and I got an A. He became my mentor, and I went on from there, and he got me in the best liberal arts college in the United States at that time in Ohio. I was math and English major, taught high school for a year, came back, taught at DePaul. When I was 22 years old, I taught math at DePaul. I taught their most advanced courses because I'd learned them at Oberlin. Then I went ahead and got a PhD in math, and then I was a professor for 7 years. Then I went out and started and just applied math to all sorts of things. And I can sit here all day and tell you about all sorts of things I applied math to. Are you a NASCAR fan?
I watch NASCAR.
All right. Out of many businesses I did with math, practical math lets you do all sorts of things. I developed something in the 1970s called the Dynabrain, testing racing engines on water brake dynamometers. And my number one customer was Australian Racing in Charlotte, North Carolina. And they had a racer named Dave Marcus. And he wasn't winning races. They fired him. I'm down there talking to him. Roland Willock was the general manager. And I said, I hear you fired your driver. And he said, yeah. He said, we got the best racing engines because of your Dynabrain. We got the best racing engines. And he's just not that good a driver. So he's hired his new driver. He's a wild guy, and he's older, and no one else would hire him. And we've hired him, and we're going to give him a chance. And he says, he's there at the back. Call him up. He said, I want you to meet Craig Hane. He's the guy that we built the Dynabrain that we got. Makes our engines the best engine. You're going to have the best racing engine in NASCAR, but you got to go out and be the best driver. Craig, I want you to meet our new driver, Dale Earnhardt. So wow. I knew Dale before he ran his first NASCAR race. And then he won 5 races that year, end of the year. Then he won Rookie of the Year. Then he won Grand National. I quit making the Dynabrain. When I went to produce it, Intel quit making the microprocessor chip that went into it, the 4040. Couldn't produce it. So then I went and did other things. And then I've applied math to many other things. I could sit here, if you had several hours, I could tell you lots of stories.
Wow, that's really cool. As someone who's passionate about breaking down the barriers of math and education, what are some of the key things you said that our public schools are doing to make math harder on our students?
3 or 4 things. Number one, they're still teaching the old manual tools that no one would use anymore. So the first thing I do with a teenager is I teach them to use a scientific calculator. Schools let them use it, they don't teach them. There's only about 16 things on this calculator you need to know to do practical math. So I teach them that. They learn it in a couple of weeks, and it turns their psychology around. It gets their psychology right. The bottom line is, if a student is afraid of math, doesn't like math, he's not going to learn math. So this turns the psychology around. It's almost like playing a game. Well, that was easy. Then I teach them practical algebra, 10 lessons. That's all. That's all you need for practical algebra. In high school, they teach all kinds of things you'll never use in algebra. Some is manual tools you'll never use, and some is theory. Now, algebra is a tool you apply to something. Then I teach them practical geometry, 19 lessons. How long is something? What is the area? What's the volume? And they love it. Now, you can't do angles adequately with that, so then I teach trigonometry, 7 lessons. They go through all that, practical algebra, geometry, in 1 semester. And at that point, they know more math than 95% of all the adults in the United States. They know more math than you do.
So explain to me what you mean by practical algebra, because I know people may not understand that term. So kind of break that down for us.
Well, in any technical subject, I had a company for 25 years where we taught technicians, hydraulics, pneumatics, electrical, rigging, on and on. In any technical subject, you need what I call practical math. That is how to how long is something, what's the area, what's the volume, what are the angles. And to do that, you need to use arithmetic and algebra. Well, the calculator makes the arithmetic very easy. There's a $10 calculator. By the way, if you'd have had this calculator during the Manhattan Project in the early 40s, if you'd had one, and no one knew, it'd been more than $1 million.
Wow.
Because you can do things with it you cannot do manually, and you can do it so much faster and easier. So forget the manual tools. Use the tool. Then in high school today, the math educators, our math curriculum started over 100 years ago. You have a whole year of algebra, and they put all kinds of stuff in it you'll never use. For example, you took algebra in high school, didn't you?
Yep, I did.
All right. Do you remember the quadratic formula?
No.
You don't even remember? Well, they taught it to you.
Yeah.
But have you ever used it? And the answer is no, you haven't.
No.
So I don't teach that. The square root of 2, what kind of a number is the square root of 2? It's an irrational. It's what kind of a number is the square root of 2? The answer is it's an irrational number. You can't express it as a fraction. That's in the algebra classes they teach. That's theory. Nobody cares about that except theoretical mathematicians.
Right.
Now, the algebra they teach in high school today, the first year of algebra, 90% of it is stuff you'll never use. It's either too much theory you'll never use, or it's tools you'll never use. I teach just what you need. And it's easy what you need. The stuff that I teach is buried in that year course, but for everything you need, there's 9 things you don't need, and they're hard to learn. And people give up. Then they grade on the horrible curve. And math is something you either understand it or you don't. So if somebody tells me, well, I took algebra and I got a B, well, okay. There's a lot of things you don't understand. You got a C or a D, I'll tell you probably didn't learn anything. Because I call the horrible curve. I explain that in my book. If you want to really understand it, just get my book, go to my website, read the book. In part 4, I have 4 chapters that I explain to you what's wrong with high school math in detail. And I'll debate it with anybody.
I'm curious.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious because you talk about using calculators. And I remember when I was in school, calculators, this was back in the 1930s, but calculators were a big no-no. We couldn't bring them to school because they said that was kind of cheating.
Yeah, they want you to learn the manual tools.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the problem. You're doing a problem. You're out there. Okay, I got 357, and I got to multiply it times 92. Well, there's a manual way to do that. And the answer is 32,844. That's the calculator. How long would it take you to do it manually? And it's error prone.
Right.
And that's just multiplication. Long division is even worse.
Oh, yes.
And then taking a square root is even worse than that. There's manual ways of doing it. I taught that. I was teaching math back before calculators came out. Do you know when the first scientific calculator came out?
1970 something?
72.
Yes.
Hewlett Packard 35, HP 35. Do you know how much it cost in today's dollars?
I know back then it was like almost $100.
No, it was $395.
Oh, was it? Yeah. Okay.
And today's dollar, that was $2,500. I was a professor at an engineering school in Indiana called Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. At that time, I was teaching the advanced theory. I was teaching the theory you need for quantum theory and theoretical physics. Okay. But my fellow professors were all teaching slide rules, log tables, trig tables. That calculator came out. Some of the students had them. Now, in today's dollars, it was $2,500. In today's dollars, $395 then. I got one from the student, looked at it, and when I spent 30 minutes on it, I go, oh my God. Slide rules are obsolete. Trig tables and log tables are obsolete. You're going to use a calculator. And I told my fellow math professors that, and they freaked out because that was what they taught. And it was almost 10 years before they quit using slide rules. Now, Hewlett Packard thought they're going to sell 10,000 of them just to engineers.
Right.
They sold 100,000 of them. Oh my God. So they lowered the price to $195. In the meantime, Texas Instruments came out and made an even better one for under $100. That's probably about the time you came along.
Yeah, that's the one I remember, the TI, yeah.
And then they got better and better. This calculator today costs about $10. It's better than any of those original calculators. It's the best little scientific calculator that I know of. It does fractions, for example. That's one thing that makes it good. There's a lot of other things. By the way, half the things on this calculator you'll never use.
Right.
I don't teach them. I only teach what you're going to use. There's a key on here called the HYP key, HYP. You don't know what it is, and you would never use it if I taught it. It's for hyperbolic trig functions. Don't use those. Use regular trig functions, which is on here too. And I teach you what you do use. And the students love it. It takes most students to learn how to use this calculator for practical math about 2 weeks. Because the way I teach it, I have tutorial videos off of Amazon Web Services and notes and exercises. Because you really learn by doing math. You don't learn by just listening to somebody talk about it. You have to do it. And then quizzes and then you climb the ladder. And I explain all that in the book. And then once you've learned to use the calculator, now all your arithmetic will be done with the calculator. Then you can learn practical algebra, 10 lessons, practical geometry, 19 lessons, practical trig, 7 lessons in about 1 semester. And you'll know more math now. You'll know what you need for technical school. Now, if you're going into college, you need some more math for the SAT, and I have a tier 3 for that. The first is tier 1 and 2, then tier 3, and that's a lot of stuff you'll never use, but you need it for the SAT if you're going to take it. Still, just use a calculator. Now, let's say you do good on the SAT. Are you ready for science and engineering at a good school like MIT or Purdue? No. Now you need all those subjects I just talked about in a much deeper level.
Right.
When you do them manually, they're very difficult. But there's a new tool that came out in 2009 that does for those subjects, for STEM, what the calculator did for practical math.
What tool is that?
You may have heard of it. It's called Wolfram Alpha.
I haven't heard of that.
And I explain it in this book. Came out in 2009, and it now makes the math you need for science and engineering all the way through calculus and differential equations, which I teach at the high school level. It now takes it from a difficulty level of 8 down to a difficulty level of 2.
Wow.
It does for STEM math. They call it STEM, science, technology, engineering, math. It does for STEM math what the calculator does for practical math. No one teaches it. It's not in any textbooks. That's one reason why they're destroying the USA. People that might want to go into science can't get through the math, and they quit because of the way it's taught. It's kind of like if you wanted to learn music and I made you spend a year studying Gregorian chants before you could study anything else, you might get discouraged and drop out of music.
Yeah, I would. I love Gregorian chant, but
well, pick one you don't like.
Right.
We all have things we like, things we don't like. But anyway, math is very easy today now when it's taught properly, and there's no one doing it. I thought someone else would be doing it, but now I started this about 10 years ago, and I've trained hundreds of students now, mostly homeschool students. But any teenager can do it and take it. And then it will also make the math they're taking in their school probably easier for them. Although I don't teach a lot of the stuff that they're teaching in the regular school.
So I have a question for you. You talk about the SAT and the ACT. Do they allow students now to bring calculators for the SAT and ACT?
You can bring the TI-30XA.
Okay.
But you can't bring a cell phone.
Okay.
You can't bring a smartphone. You know why? You get on a smartphone, go Wolfram Alpha, and it'll answer all the questions.
Okay.
If you know how to ask. Wolfram Alpha is a tool. Here's the math. There's two things about math. There's concepts and there's tools. The concepts of math are very easy. Calculus is very easy concepts. I can teach you the concepts of calculus in 3 hours. Actually, I've got 3 videos I do it on that are free on my website. I have a video library. I have 3 videos that will teach you the concepts of calculus in about an hour. The concepts. Now the tools to apply the concepts, The old manual tools are very difficult. But with Wolfram Alpha, once you understand the concepts, you know how to ask the question, bingo, bango, solved.
So why have we not evolved in our school systems to address the math disparity, as the math gap there, by teaching the tools you're talking about?
Very simple. Money, honey.
Oh,
money. If you're a math educator and you're writing the textbooks and making up the tests, every high school math textbook today is obsolete. But it's $1 billion industry. So are you going to write a book? The wipes it. Nobody's done it. They don't want to change. And so they make the textbooks this thick. I use the best high school math textbook was ever written was by the greatest teacher in the 20th century, a guy named Simmons. And he wrote the greatest topology book, which you use that for quantum theory and Hilbert spaces. Then he wrote the greatest differential equation book ever read. Then he wrote the greatest calculus book. Then he wrote one called Pre-Calculus Mathematics in a Nutshell, Algebra, Geometry, and Trig. 119 pages, less than $20. Wow, it came out in 1988. Now, I was no longer a professor then. I was now doing business, but I kind of followed what was going on. So I bought 20 of these books and I gave them to various people. I said, go start using this in your schools. Nobody ever adopted it. It's still in print. I still use it in Tier 3 and Tier 4. 119 pages. And he tells exactly the kind of thing I am about the stuff you shouldn't teach, what you should. It's a really good book. I gave that book to my youngest son when he was in the 8th grade, and he went through it on his own, and he won a scholarship to the best engineering school in Indiana.
Wow.
8th grade. Because of that book.
What's the name of the book again, for those who may want to look it up?
Pre-Calculus Mathematics in a Nutshell by Dr. George Simmons. And it's about $20.
Wow.
No school used it. I never heard of a school that used it. I mean, there may be one I don't know about, but they use the algebra books that are $300 books or $200, expensive, big, thick books, and they're loaded with stuff I just told you about you'll never use. Both theory and practical tools. And I could give you lots of examples. We can stay here for the next hour, and I could give you example after example after example of stuff they're teaching that you'll never use. So and it's hard stuff.
So give us a couple examples for those who are listening to this podcast. I'm sure a lot of people are going, oh, wow, now I understand why math was so hard. But give us some examples of things that they teach you that you'll never use.
You take a polynomial with integer coefficients of degree n, let's say 6. And you can take the leading coefficient and the last coefficient, factor it into primes, and make all the rational numbers you can make out of those prime numbers. And if this polynomial has a rational root, it'll be one of those numbers. So then you test it against all those numbers. Now, all this takes a lot of time and effort, and it's error prone. And that's one way to find out the root of a high degree polynomial, because otherwise there's no algorithm to do it. The problem is no polynomial you'll ever run in the real world has rational roots. So who gives a damn? It's a valueless, it works, but it's valueless. And it's hard to learn. The square root of an integer is irrational unless it's a perfect square. I can prove that to you. It's called a reductio ad absurdum proof. The Pythagoreans discovered it. The simplest one is you take a right triangle where the legs are 1 and 1 and the hypotenuse is the square root of 2, Pythagorean theorem. And they discovered that it was not a rational number. And it so upset them, the guy that discovered it, they threw him out of a boat and drowned him, they said. But what they did do, they retreated from numbers. It just did geometry. And then Archimedes came along 200 years later and started using numbers. And he did things that, well, I'll give you an example. In Euclidean geometry, you take a circle and it's got a diameter. If you divide the circle, the length of the circle by the diameter, that's a number. Do you know the name of the number?
No.
It's called pi. You ever hear pi?
Yeah.
Okay, that's circumference divided by diameter. Now, what's the area of a circle? Euclid didn't know. They couldn't figure it out. Archimedes did. And it turns out if you take the circumference and divide it by 2 and the diameter and divide it by 2 and multiply them, that's the area of a circle. And Archimedes proved it. And he used techniques that are precursors to modern calculus. Calculus didn't come along until the 1600s with Newton and Leibniz. And the reason we have modern science is because of what is called the fundamental theorem of calculus. That allows you to take a curve that has area under it and calculate the area under that curve very easily. The curve there's a formula for it called a function. Then you got to find another function whose derivative is this curve, and then you evaluate it. Finding that other function is extremely difficult. That flunks more kids out of engineering school. They call it an antiderivative. That flunks more kids out of engineering school than anything else. When I taught engineering school, it's called integral calculus. Today, Wolfram Alpha makes it easy. Done. You give it the function, boom. And by the way, some functions do not have an antiderivative in terms of other ordinary functions. You have to have what's called a special function to involve infinite series. Wolfram Alpha does all that automatically.
Wow. So as you think about where our math education is today, where do you see the future of it going with technology playing a big role in it?
Try and math, what I do, my program, or something equally good. There's no one else out there doing it, but I've got the only program today that I know of. I tell people, if you know of another program that does what mine does, I'll give you $1,000.
All right.
Because I want to know about it. And I think I would know.
Yeah, you would.
I'm not too worried about losing my $1,000, but no big deal.
So tell us about your program a little bit more.
Well, in order to make it affordable, what I've done is I have created what I call the Triad Math Army and the Triad Math Tribe. They're similar. And mostly I go after adults that have children. So if you join the Army, it's $30 a month and you have access to all the math, everything. And it's $30 a month. And you can train it and you can put all your children into that program. It's all just for $30. If you hired a tutor that could do what I do, if you hired someone like me that could do it, it would cost you thousands of dollars per month to do it. And you're getting it for $30 a month. Me, tutorial videos off of Amazon Web Services, notes, notebooks. I used to have to print them out from PDF copies, but I found a printer that would print these notebooks. This is the sample of one. I found a printer that'll print this book for just a few dollars and send it to you.
Okay.
Guess who the printer is that'll do that? Guess who I use as my printer?
Who?
Amazon.
Oh.
And there's no one else that'll do it that I know of. It's amazing what they do. Amazon prints this book. You can go buy this book at Amazon for $4.80. Amazon will sell me these books. $4.80 is retail. You're an Amazon Prime customer, right?
Right.
You go to Amazon, you buy $4.80 plus state tax, whatever your state tax is, Iowa tax, and it comes to you, shipping free and everything, and you get it in 2 days. One book. It's unbelievable. I couldn't believe it when I found out they would do that a couple of years ago when I found out they'd do that. So I use Amazon. The tutorial videos come off Amazon Web Services. That's me. It's called Kitchen Table Math. You don't see my picture. You just see me working on the math that's in your notebook. So you can add to it and then do exercises. I'm just teaching how to do things, concepts, and then how to do things. All my life, I've had a pretty interesting life. And I've had a lot of problems in my life, like everybody does. ups and downs. I've lost lots of businesses, succeed for a while, then they fail, succeed, then they fail. I told you about the Dynabrain.
Right.
I got lots of other stories like that. I've made millions of dollars thanks to math, but I also invested and lost millions of dollars because I'm an adventurer.
Right.
I've been up the Amazon River. I swum with the Indians. Okay. I can tell you all that. And in one of my businesses, I had a motor home and I'd go around the country doing training, on-site training in technology and technical subjects. I've been to every state in the union. I've taught out on Vancouver Island. If it wasn't for math, none of that would have happened. Practical math. Okay. So you're going to enroll your son in that, and I'll be surprised if very quickly he doesn't like math. You're going to have to go buy him a calculator, and you're going to go to Amazon and buy him the book. You could print out the PDFs, but I'd recommend go to Amazon and buy them. And away it goes. And then start saying, so then people say, what else besides math? I said, well, I was very blessed in my life to have a lot of what I call wisdom tools.
Right.
Here's what I define a wisdom tool to be. You take actions, and every action you take has consequences. That's just like gravity. That's take an action, has consequences. Some consequences are good, some are bad. Depends on your definition.
Right.
Some are short-term, some are long-term. What often happens is you do something, it has a good short-term consequence and a bad long-term. Well, a wisdom tool will let you understand what will be the consequences of an action, and then you can decide what actions you want to take to get the consequences you desire. And if you think long-term, it'll be different than if you just think short-term. And I tell that story again in here. I acquired those wisdom tools over the years from many, many sources, some from the Bible, but a lot of them from other wise people. And I got about 24 wisdom tools that you also have access to. And all it is to me, it's a video explaining a wisdom tool that I learned.
That's amazing. So, Craig, I'd like to ask my guest this question because this has been a fascinating conversation, and I've learned so much from it. What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, the most important thing in my life, of course, is my family. And I've had a fabulous family. I'll soon celebrate. You know how old I am?
I would say 55.
How old?
55.
Yeah. You're teasing. You're teasing, of course.
I guess about 60 or 67.
Get your calculator out. I remember Pearl Harbor.
Oh, okay.
I'm 86 years old.
Oh, wow.
I was born November 30, 1938. 1 week after my third birthday, Pearl Harbor. Now, I'm 86 years old, and I don't have any aches or pains, and I don't take medicine, and I'm active. I could do 2 or 3 podcasts like this a day. When I'm doing these podcasts, one of my wisdom tools is get in a state of flow. When I'm doing a podcast with you like this, I'm in a state of flow. There's a book called Flow by Sigma Haley, and I explain that. You want to try to get that. You want to do things you're intrinsically motivated versus extrinsically. You want financial freedom. You want to know how to deal with difficult people. On and on and on. I learned all these mostly from other people. And you had good habits and bad habits. We all do. Okay, legacy. Well, the most important thing is I have a wonderful family. I have 3 children. They've been fabulously successful. I won't get into the details of it, but they've done great. And I have grandchildren that I think are going to do great. They're doing great so far.
Right.
But not counting my family, what I would like my legacy to be is I achieved my mission with Triad Math. My mission for Triad Math is to train any young adult or teenager the math they need to live an optimal life that they want to live. And that's millions of people. And if we do that, that will probably, first of all, we have all the new AI tools coming out. You got to know basic math, then you learn AI tools. If we do that, our economy will get much, much, much stronger. if Donald Trump's right, and we bring all these manufactured companies back to the United States, who the heck's going to work them?
Right.
If you don't know practical math, they won't hire you. And most of our young people today, you talk to Charlie Kirk, most of our young people today haven't got the skill sets. But with the practical math, then they can get the skill set easily. One of my wisdom tools is, should you go to college or not? And most kids shouldn't. They could go into a technical field, make $50,000, $100,000 a year if they know how to go about it with no debt. Now, there's some that should go to college. And then I tell you, if you're going to go to college, I teach you how to do it with no debt. That's one of my wisdom tools. Got lots of wisdom tools. Okay. The ultimate mission, if we do all that, is to stop war. Because believe me, if we don't stop war, we're going to destroy ourselves.
Right.
We've had to threat a nuclear war for many, many, many decades, but we got many worse things today than nuclear. And if we don't stop war, this thing is going on in Gaza and Ukraine and on, and now we're having the trade war with China and blah, blah. If we don't stop the wars, and just think of all the misery that creates. Think of the billions of people today that are miserable because of war. And the truth of the matter is, the United States, I hate to say it, it's a warmongering country. Look at the wars we've got ourselves into and all the people that have died and then what came out of them. And let's don't get into, anyway, so my mission is to educate enough people that we get a great enough economy and society that we can stop war. And that would be my legacy.
That's awesome. Where can people find you and find the materials you have and connect with you on social media?
CraigHane.com, CraigHane.com is my website. I don't get on social media. I don't use Facebook. I don't use X. I don't use Instagram. I'm on them technically, but I don't, and LinkedIn, I don't use any of that. But if they go to my website, my email address is there, my phone number. Well, I tell them, you send me your phone number, I'll put you in my contact list, then you can call me. I do a lot of Zoom meetings. I love Zoom. And what I do is I record the Zoom meetings and then I make an unlisted YouTube video so that I got a record of it. I hope you'll give me a recording of this meeting we're having.
Oh, definitely.
And then there's tabs on my website that take you to different web pages. So, for example, one of the tabs, if you want to improve your life, it takes you to the Triad Math Army. And then there's another tab that takes you to a different one. And I've got, and then you also on my website, I've got other companies I send you to, like Workforce Math. And today I'm doing something that some of your people might want to do. I'm just starting now. We're going to do what I call practical math, workforce math workshops, camps, where kids can enroll in it online. And for 10 weeks, they go through all this, just working an hour or so a day at their own, and get through the math, especially kids that are already going to school. And they you know, oh, I hate math, I don't want any more math. Well, they'll love this. So anyway, that would be my legacy if I had my choice.
Well, Craig, thanks so much for taking the time. And really, I think this was a fruitful conversation. And I'm so thankful for what you do to make math not so daunting for people. And thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast.
Well, by the way, it's more than just being not daunting. They love it.
Yeah, love it would be great.
They like it. Well, anything is until you get to certain. Sports aren't much fun when you first get started.
No, not really.
I get you succeeding in math so quickly that you begin to enjoy it. You become intrinsically motivated to do it. You're not just doing it to get a grade. You're doing it because, whoa, boy, I can see the value of this. I can see why this is going to help me in my life. And it's fun and it's easy. It's easy when it's done properly.
Well, that's what we want. So thank you again, Craig, for
You're welcome.
Adding great content for us today.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you.
Do you know that most entrepreneurs hit a revenue ceiling and have no idea why? They're working harder, spending more money, running more ads, but revenue stays flat. My friend Dr. Noah St. John calls this the invisible break. He's giving our listeners a free revenue ceiling audit to help you see what's really holding you back. You'll get a free 30-day membership to NoahBot, giving you access to Dr. Noah's 30 years of experience to help you reach your next level. But hurry, because there's only 50 available this month. So if you're tired of being stuck at the same revenue level and want to finally break through, get your free revenue ceiling audit at drnoahvault.com in the affiliate link that'll be listed in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to Becoming Bridge Builder. If you enjoyed this episode and want to help support the podcast, please subscribe and share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at @BKeithHaney and on Getter and Twitter @RevHeadpin. Thanks again and tune in next time.